So welcome to this evening's Zoom call, and we're really glad to have all of you with us. Sadly, we probably won't have time to get to know everyone on the call, but hopefully, if you've got particular questions that you want to ask, we should be able to have a time for a Q&A at the end. But for those of you that don't know, my name is Sarah. I've been involved with the Passion for Evangelism Network for a couple of years now. In my day job, I work for a charity that befriends and shares the gospel with international students. So I'm going to pray for us now as we start, that this would be a time that we can focus on learning from one another, learning from those that are experienced in social media, and also for the Lord to speak to each of us in it. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much that we are able to meet here tonight, although we are all isolated in our own homes. Thank you that you have provided technology for such a time as this, that we are able to come together as women who know and love you, who want to share you in the context that you've placed us. Lord, I pray that you would help us this evening to sort of think about how we can share you better where you have put us, how we can use our social media profiles for your glory and not just for our light. Pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I'm Kate. I have been involved in Passion for Evangelism maybe for a year, since I got introduced to Nay by someone that I was at college with in Oxford. It's really great that you're all kind of popping in. So nice to see so many faces. We've been thinking about doing this event for a while, but I guess as time has gone on, it's become more and more clear that it's hopefully going to be a really helpful evening. We are living in a time where, I don't know about you, but I'm spending a lot of time on social media because I have so much free time. But I want to be talking about my faith, and I want to be chatting about my faith and trying to share my faith with the people who follow me. But how do we do that? And how do we, connect pictures or images or videos that we're posting to Jesus? And what are some of the things that might be difficult about that? What about comparison when we're seeing that someone else is going absolutely viral and we're not, but we think what we're saying is really interesting? And what about not getting so addicted to it? And what about not making it about ourselves and making sure that it's all about Jesus? We wanted to put together a panel of people who might be able to be interesting people for you to hear from, to give you some inspiration about how you could be using your social media, but also some people who could just give you some really wise advice. We've got people who are using YouTube, who write blogs, who make videos, who do slam poetry, or who just have personal Instagram profiles where they're like sharing their faith with their friends. So hopefully this evening we'll show you a really different wide range of people, and really hope it'll be helpful. If you have any questions that you want to ask, then put them in the chat at the bottom of the screen. Over to Sarah, and she's going to explain the format of the evening, and then we will get going.
Yeah, great. So as Kate said, we've got people with a real mix of experience here in social media. Some have been doing it for a lot longer than others, but all of them, we think, have got things that we can learn from one another and learn from them in particular. So we are going to go around each of them. Now, we're going to attempt to be quite strict with time. So each of them will have 10 minutes hearing from them. So basically, we'll spend the first hour of our time together going around the 6 of them, hearing from them on a couple of key questions. But there'll then be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So if you've got questions that you particularly want to ask, we won't have time to do that to each of them as we're going through. But what would be great is if you can put it on the chat, then you can, they'll be registered and we can come back to them for the Q&A. Also, if you've not used Zoom before, just be aware the chat box will come up if you click that at the bottom, relatively self-explanatory. But there's also other things that you can do there. So just across from chat, it says reactions. So let's encourage those that are speaking, because we can either clap or give a thumbs up. So if the things that people are saying, then give them a virtual thumbs up. So it would look something like this. There you go. I've just given myself a thumbs up. So
I gave you one too.
oh, okay. And then clap like that. It's a way of being able to try and engage with one another in a format that's just slightly weird. All of our speakers are very kindly agreed to be interviewed in this. None of them are here because they're Zoom experts or people who are used to speaking on Zoom. So let's be as encouraging to them as we can. Was actually just have a little scroll through to see who was here. And I was pleasantly surprised to see two very familiar faces I wasn't expecting to see this evening. So if we're in the room together, we would naturally look around and see who's here. So please do that, see which friends are here that you might not have expected. Like, make the most of the social side of this, even though it isn't necessarily what we would be used to at a conference.
Thanks so much, Christy. Next up, we are going to talk to Joanna. Joanna, do you want to give everyone a wave? Here we are. This is Joanna. This is what Joanna said about social media when we were just beginning our discussions ready for this chat. Thanks. Should we go to Joanna now? Thanks so much, Beth. Hi, Joanna. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Do you want to tell us a bit about your use of social media?
Yeah, so I do social media in my job, so I work in like kind of digital communications for an environmental charity, and I used to work with UCCF on their communications, and particularly with the Uncover project as well, so kind of helping students think about how they might share their faith online, as well as just kind of telling stories about what the charity was doing. And then in my personal life, I just love Instagram, so I'm mainly just use Instagram and Facebook for personal relationships with friends.
Great, thank you so much. And I think something that I really wonder for someone who, like you, just has a kind of private Instagram account is, how do you mix a gospel presentation in your like personal Instagram account with your everyday life? So when are you kind of pitching something and then wanting to make it about faith, and when are you just posting a picture of your dinner because it was really delicious?
I starting to feel like you followed my recent dinner posts on Instagram. I think if as Christians we believe that like Jesus is the Lord of our whole lives and God is shaping our stories, then like there isn't really a divide. So one story in the Bible that really inspires me is the story of Ruth, because she's just like, you know, on the surface she's kind of an insignificant person from a small town, and it's kind of puzzling why her story would even be recorded. But now we read it and we can see so many kind of points in the story where her story and people she meets and elements of her character kind of showcase what God is like and what our relationship with him is like. And I think that we can take that as an inspiration and say, okay, actually God is shaping our stories no matter like what stage of kind of faith we're at. So actually we can share everyday things, you know, we can share a friendship that we have, or something that we've done, or a book that we've read, or an article that we've seen, and there will always be something in there that we can celebrate, or we can explore, or we can ask questions about how it connects with faith. And I think sometimes that can be really explicit, so we can maybe say something we're thankful for, like Rachel was saying, or maybe an aspect of our faith that's kind of really come through to us through a particular event or something like that, something we're learning about who God is. But I think also just by exploring interesting things, we are reflecting God's character and God's like love for the world and his interest in all those things that are going on.
Great, thanks so much. And how do you ensure that what you're posting in your social media accounts is kind of going alongside like your face-to-face evangelism that you're doing with the friends who you see in real life?
Yeah, I think increasingly, I mean, obviously now so many of our relationships are online, but even before this, like I think lots of us would have our relationships and our friendships would be quite woven between online platforms, WhatsApp messages, Instagram posts, things like that, and also our kind of in-person friendships. So like I've had conversations with friends where they'll say, oh, I saw this thing you posted on Instagram, and then we'd have a conversation about it in real life. I might ring somebody and then later see something that's relevant to them and send them, say, an article that I've seen. So I think we just need to think about how can we bring in those like digital kind of extra material and bring that into friendships and conversations in an online way, and then also be following that up in person as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I was wondering, so you said that you were involved in the social media for UCCF in particular with Uncover Mark. So I wondered if you could tell us just a bit about what that was like for you and what you were doing.
Yeah, so we had so the Uncover Mark project, if you don't know, is the Gospel of Mark with several Bible studies picked out from it. And the idea is that it's primarily aimed at students, but lots of people in churches are using it too. And it's encouraging people to explore who Jesus is through those stories of the people he meets in Mark's account of his life. And with Mark, we really went for quite, so Mark's story is kind of a documentary account, so we kind of went for really visual photographs and questions that got people thinking about the themes raised in the studies. So on social media, we were really trying to create a community that brought together Christians and non-Christians kind of exploring and talking about who Jesus is together, but also something that really kind of drew out elements of the story and different kind of media types and helped people to engage. So things like photographs that picked up on like the emotions and the characters of the story, that kind of got people thinking about who are the people that Jesus is meeting, what are they feeling, and potentially connecting with those characters on that level, and that kind of helps them then to connect with Jesus in that story. We also did like videos kind of based on the Mark drama with actors talking about their character in the story. So yeah, and lots of interactive things as well, so like Instagram stories, polls, questions, kind of vox pop videos where we asked people on the street what they thought, just to reflect that like community and just sort of showing that different perspectives were welcome in the conversation. So.
I was just wondering, I'm really interested in the first thing you said of that was pictures that would connect with the characters in the Gospel of Luke. Can you give us any kind of specific examples if you can remember them?
Yeah, so one I like is the story of the woman who's bleeding and who comes to Jesus, and the brief that we gave, so we worked with a photographer called Kieran Dodds, who was excellent, and the brief that we gave him was not to necessarily like illustrate the story, but to kind of just capture the mood and emotion of it.
Yeah.
And we had lots of different photos that we kind of swapped around and chose for different stories. But the one of that is of a woman kind of standing in central London amongst sort of traffic, but she's looking directly at the camera. And I think just the kind of boldness of her gaze is quite powerful. And lots of questions that are raised within that study are about kind of women and what kind of access they had, and that anyone coming to Jesus in that way would have been very bold, but particularly a woman in her situation. So I just think connecting that picture really connects with that emotion, and I think that really tells the readers and the people looking at it something about how they might approach Jesus as well.
Thank you. I think I'm so uncreative. All I'd have been able to think of was like a box of tampons. It's just so bad.
Which could also have worked.
Oh, I think that picture was better. So for those of you who, like me, lack any sense of creativity and really struggle to think about how to post something and then connect it, and generally just want to be like, look at this pretty sky or this lovely tree, can you give us any kind of tips on like how to find creativity, or like what you can think about and how you can think to be connecting the pictures you're taking?
Yeah, I suppose for me, like my Instagram account really kind of reflects my life. So I guess it's kind of thinking about like, what are the things, how can you sort of capture and represent something you've seen, or something that you're thinking about, or something that you're doing, or a person that's important to you, and then connecting that to what is that telling you, maybe something that you're learning about God's character through that. So you might see I'm a bit obsessed with blue skies, and just seeing the beauty of that kind of nature reminds me that God loves us and he blesses us, and he's created beauty and good things. And sometimes I might say that explicitly, and sometimes I might just post it and share it because I think it's joyful and I want to bring joy to other people. So something, yeah, I guess thinking about like what are those things and what is that telling you about God, or maybe something that captures how you're feeling and what is that telling you, and how could you sort of talk about how you're approaching God and exploring faith at that time.
Okay, and final question. You have a private Instagram account.
Mm-hmm.
I just was wondering about your reason for choosing to be private in your Instagram account.
So my general rule is that I wouldn't accept somebody to follow me that I haven't met. I think that just, I suppose, frees me a little bit to be a bit more open and to not worry so much about who's seeing what I'm posting, and there I can be a bit more personal with it. I think if you have a public account, you probably need to be more careful about how much you're revealing about your life, and just being aware that, you know, literally anyone could be seeing it. I mean that obviously anything that you post digitally could be shared in some way, but for me, I think it helps me to be a bit more open, and also think it gives me more of an idea of who I'm talking to, and I feel more like a relationship that I can, you know, then follow up in a conversation with somebody or something like that.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Great. Thanks so much. Back to Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Joanna. It's really interesting to hear. Yeah, especially about having a private Instagram account. That's something that I probably need to consider more. So now we are going to hear from Philippa. So Philippa, I think hopefully you should be unmuted or be able to unmute yourself. There we go. Oh, hello, Philippa. Could you tell us a little bit about what social media stuff you're involved in? Also, where in the country are you? Because that's helpful to hear as well.
Sure. I am in Cardiff at the moment, in my bedroom. And I when you ask about social media, I think probably, I was just thinking about this. If you follow me on social media, you might use the word intense to describe me. I post quite a lot of stuff on Instagram, Facebook. I don't really use Twitter because hashtag shouting into the void for me. And I have a blog. So yeah, quite a big range of places where I'm posting stuff, I guess.
Brilliant. I am one of those people who follows you, I think, on most, if not all of those platforms, and I don't think you're intense. That is not the word I would use to describe you. So yeah.
I guess what I mean is, it's sort of like, I was thinking about it, I think I sort of have this approach which is like a war of attrition on anyone who's reading anything that I post. So I will, if I watch a film that I enjoy, I'll say what I enjoy about it, and if in the film they happen to be down on Christians, then I'll try and mention something about it to be like, you know, hopefully Christians aren't as dull as they seemed in this film or whatever. Or if there's, you know, if there's a book that I've read that has a certain worldview, I'll just be trying to use as many things as I can. So I would love to have, and I probably should have a conversation with my non-Christian friends about how they find it, because they have everything between me being like, hooray, spring is a hopeful season, to me, you know, posting a blog post that's like, here are all the reasons why I should trust in Jesus or whatever. Yeah.
That's great. So when what you've said there, you are posting in quite a few places. So I know you do a variety of things, and you've just said there you've got a variety of different posts. How do you cope with comparison? So I think all of us, I definitely fall into, you know, the likes give me some form of validation. How do you stop that becoming what you post for?
Well, I guess the first thing to say is like, the question kind of implies that I've dealt with it, but I haven't. It's like an ongoing thing. I definitely do struggle with comparison. I feel particularly envious of people who have husbands who are kind of like their hype man.
Mhm.
So if they post stuff, they will always have at least one person who reposts it. I feel, yeah, I had this phase that I went through where I've got a couple of friends who have amazing Instagram followings, and they know this, that this is my attitude to them, but they'd like post a picture of like an old coffee cup and they'd get 400 likes. And I was so into photography, like I would be like tramping through fields to get the perfect shot of like the sun setting over horses, and I'd end up with 5 likes, and I'd be like, what the heck is going on here? So I do massively struggle with comparison, and it's like an ongoing thing. But I think something that's really helped me, and I hope will be an encouragement to people, is that verse in Acts 17 that says, God has ordained the times and places where people will live so that they will seek God and find him. And so God's ordained the times and places, not for me, but for the people, not the unbelievers that I know. He has ordained that they will know me. And so I am a unique witness in terms of like my giftings, in terms of my interests, in terms of like where my career has led me and the people that I've met there, in terms of the suffering that I've been through. That is a unique thing that Jesus has entrusted to me. And I also have a unique audience. You know, I think maybe lots of us have felt this during the coronavirus, but like I go on Facebook and I am overwhelmed because I know a lot of Christians on Facebook, and they're all posting the exact thing that you should be reading about the coronavirus right now. And then lol, hilariously, I'm posting something about the coronavirus every day. And I just think that is just so overwhelming. But I think I have to be like, my audience isn't the entirety of Facebook. My audience is the audience that's unique to me. And I guess everyone in this chat will have people who, you are the Christian that they know, or you're one of the Christian, you know, you are part of the witness to that person. And I think that has really helped me. And of course there are other, you know, there are all kinds of things. I think there's a second part of your question, which was how do you, I can't remember. Sorry, I think I've waffled it.
That was just how do you deal with comparison? Was that question? I can ask you question 2 now if you like.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if you're reading the chat, but Nate Dawson has offered to be your hype man, so I think that is on record. You can get that sorted. You can do a deal later. How about isolation? You talked about tweeting into the void or shouting into the void on Twitter. Are other platforms the same? You know, if you're getting a low number of likes and things, is that, you know, do you find isolation an issue?
I do find isolation an issue, and it's honestly not that much to do with how much response I get. I get some kind of response from a lot of things that I post. Thanks, Mum. No, there are responses there, but I do find it really isolating because my blog is about, in my blog I've written about depression, I've written about my experience of the Rwanda genocide, I've written about being dumped, and they're all quite kind of vulnerable experiences, and so no reaction kind of feels equal to what you've given, if you know what I mean. Like, even if you do get a like, you still feel this kind of, you've given more than you've received. And I guess one of the things that helps with that is, like, the lifestyle of giving more than you can receive is the lifestyle of a disciple, right? Like, that is what it means to be like Jesus, is to give more than you receive. So that has helped me. Another thing is just obedience to Jesus. He has said, be a witness, and I think if I have an idea, I'll tend to do it, even if it's really messy. So it's just a question of obedience. A couple of other things, thank you. A couple of other things is, Jesus is honored by our efforts as well as our accomplishments. So I think quite often when I put a post out there, I desperately want people to read it. Thank you. That's just my dinner.
Brilliant.
When I put something out there, I desperately want people to read it. But like the things that I'm saying about Jesus, I want to say them and I want to declare them. And even if no one else sees them or responds, I at least feel like, well, the spiritual realm has seen it, you know, Jesus is worthy. And so I have to get into the habit of submitting for him. But my heart is, like I say, it's hard. And I think the other thing is that God's challenged me is like, you need to focus on who is reading it and not who isn't reading it. As in, like, the way it's so easy to think about the effectiveness of our ministry in terms of numbers rather than in terms of, like, you know, Jesus goes out and he seeks the one lost sheep and he leaves the other 99 behind. And so when we're doing our witness, that's what we're doing. We're trying to reach the one. And so what if we don't get 100 retweets? I mean, I have other things I can say about that because I'm like, I want to get it out to everyone. But still, that's not on me. You know, we sow the seed and Jesus takes it where he wants it to go. So I think that has helped me.
That's really helpful. Thanks for that, Philippa. One other question. If there are other people on this call who are a bit like me, who really enjoy reading other people's blogs, you know, like potentially yours, but never want to comment or engage with it actually because of fear of their own vulnerability, that's definitely the case for me, what would you say? Like, how's a good way to encourage somebody if you're feeling uncomfortable about engaging?
That is a really good question. I think that's really common, and I've had lots of people say to me in person, I really like what you've written, but then they don't tend to like it online. I really would encourage people that if you have read something online that you would like someone else to read, the way that algorithms work is that you need to like it so that people will see. And so if that's the way that you can kind of spread it, and I guess I quite often feel like the writer's been vulnerable too, right? So the writer has kind of put themselves out there, heart and soul, and all you're doing is liking it. So there is a way that you can serve. And sometimes I've wanted to say to people, please will you partner with me in my ministry by just liking the things that I post. And I don't want to pretend that like I'm not a like hunter. You know, I got angry about the coffee cup picture not getting more likes than me. Like, I do want likes, I do want that affirmation, but I do also think, you know, I fully acknowledging that my motives are a massive mix. It is also true that if you want people to read it, you need to like it. And you don't have to comment, you can send a private message or whatever, but actually a comment can draw other people in, which will be massively appreciated by the writers, I guess.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that, Philippa. Just to say, we are so thankful for Philippa and the other guests that were partway through interviewing, but we don't think that they're the only people who know what they're talking about on this call whatsoever. We're really thankful that they've given up their evening, and there's some brilliant questions coming in the group chat if you haven't had a look. I think if there are some things that you could add, so I noticed that Angeline's asked for how we could make the most of this week, given that it is Holy Week. If you've got ideas, please feel free to engage with that and to answer and to share things. Let's learn from one another. We are all figuring this out. COVID-19 world is new to us all. So yeah, I don't think there are clear answers, but we can help one another by sharing thinking that's already been done. Okay.
Thanks so much. I also big up Philippa. I love what she posts. She's massively inspired me to share more on my Instagram about my faith. It's all because of her. I wouldn't have started it without her Instagram posts, like genuinely. I mean, like honestly, inspirational. Okay, next up, Inonge. Inonge, do you want to give us a wave? And
Hi.
you'll be highlighted in the screen, and I will no longer have to look at my massive face. Yay! How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Inonge, do you want to tell us a bit about number 2? No, there we go. Inonge is all over the internet. She has a YouTube channel. Actually, sorry, why am I talking? Inonge, please tell us about yourself.
So I've kind of just been getting into social media over the last few years. I actually have a full-time like secular job, but I do YouTube videos, and I have an Instagram, which is mainly aimed at Christian audience, but I have my private Instagram, which has completely different content to my kind of Christian overflow chat one. And I've recently been experimenting with TikTok as well, and I'm working on maybe doing a blog with a few other people. So yeah, kind of just as stuff comes up, I'm like, oh, I'll try that, see how it goes. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
I actually looked at some of your TikTok videos today, and there was one of them I genuinely laughed out loud. Honestly, go to Inonge's page. It's on the Overflow chat, isn't it?
Overflow chat, yeah.
And watch her TikTok videos, because you will not be disappointed. Okay, so you have lots of different platforms where you are doing slightly different things, and I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about kind of your thoughts behind what you're doing with your YouTube channel and what you're doing with your TikTok videos, and then what you're doing on your 2 different Instagram accounts, and how you're choosing what you're posting on each one and how they are different from each other.
Yeah. So things have kind of just got off hand a little bit, but in a good way. So I started off with a YouTube channel about this time last year, and it really kind of came from a desire to share theology, but in an accessible way. And I just finished doing Cornhill, and then I was working a secular job, and I kind of wanted to engage with some of that stuff a bit more. So I thought I need something to get this out, and I feel better talking than I do kind of writing it down. So that's kind of what brought about the YouTube channel, and I kind of wanted to tackle a few cultural issues as well from kind of a biblical perspective. And then as I was doing the videos, a few times I was thinking, oh, there's a lot more I'd want to say about this, and then I had no outlet to do it. So I started the Instagram page and the Overflow chat one, and just to kind of, you know, have an overflow of some of the stuff that was coming up. And then the more I engaged with that, the more I just had other stuff going on. It would just be like conversation with friends and church community groups, stuff I was studying. And so that kind of went on the page as well. And then I discovered that lots of non-Christians were watching my very Christian videos. Colleagues from work could be like, oh, I saw your video. And I'll be like, what video? So I started to think a bit more about how to tap into that and make use of that. So my YouTube channel started off as a Christian kind of theology channel, and now there's all sorts of videos on there. Sometimes I'm just talking about life as a millennial and some of the challenges I'm facing, life changes, and just talking about it like normally, but just kind of letting like the gospel shape some of that. And other times I kind of just share my culture. So I grew up in Zambia. I've lived half my life in Zambia, half of it in Scotland. So a few times I've kind of wanted to share something and I know where to put it, so I'll put it on YouTube. Yeah. So you find some funny Zambian culture videos on there as well. And so it's just become an overflow of my life, really, the YouTube channel. It messes up the algorithm, like it's just confused, has no idea who to show my content to. But I did just discover that most of my followers were actually people that I knew, not necessarily people I was speaking to, but just people I've known in all my life. And so I'm just quite content with that. It's a small channel, and that's fine. I like, at least my content is relatable. Not all of it is relatable, like when I'm talking about Zambia, Scottish people are like, whoa, what's going on? But it's Inonge, basically, and the people, 80% I think of people that watch the stuff are people that I know. So yeah, so that's kind of YouTube. TikTok, I just kind of, I have no idea. It's difficult to explain. It's better experienced than explained, but I just wanted to experiment with another video platform. So I've been doing different content, funny videos, apologetics, Bible, like and just trying to make the most of that. I think it's probably a better platform for people that can do the shorter videos, like and creatives like musicians, people sharing art. So I'm trying to get some of my friends that I know that can do that stuff really well onto TikTok. I'm not sure how it's going to work for me. I've kind of not really done very much recently.
Questions that I noticed in the chat, which I guess we could talk about now, was someone asking about how you pitch things for like your non-Christian colleagues and your friends. And you're saying that like your colleagues started watching what you were doing. So did that kind of change what you were posting?
Not really, actually. I'm thinking about it now. I'm thinking more actively about how to do that. So with regards to how I use my different channels, so on my actual personal Instagram, I just share my life, kind of like Joanna was sharing, like the funny, the mundane, like just all of that. Like if you go to my personal, it's random, like my Insta stories. Sometimes I'm miming to like Westlife, sometimes I'm dancing, other times I'm just, and then I'll share something meaningful every now and again. So it's just like an overflow of whatever is going on in my life. So sometimes there's a few videos that I've done specifically for non-Christian audiences. One where I explain the gospel and one where I talk about like pursuing happiness. So I'll share that on my personal Instagram. But I kind of just drip really with regards to that. But I am, and this is something that I'm just an ongoing conversation with myself. How do I make the most of that? They're watching most of my videos. So how do I speak into that without it being too like obvious I'm like talking at them? So what I've started, so you may have seen one of my recent video I did was just me talking about Jesus and the peace and what like it means for Jesus to bring peace to us, and that was very much the non-Christian audience in mind. The issue that I have is the time. I find it a bit difficult to actually say something in an accessible way, but with depth. I'm just like an intense person. I cannot do, like, it just comes out intense. So I'm trying to do it in a way that's accessible, and it means I need to work a little bit harder at it. And with not a lot of time on my hands, usually, now I do, but usually then I just kind of go, oh, I'll do that. I need to do more of that. I'll do that later. So I'm actually doing that now and thinking, how can I speak into this? And I think it comes from like watching and listening. So what are the people that I have on my social media? And it's different on Instagram to Facebook. Like the audiences are just like not the same. What are they talking about? What kind of things do they share themselves? So a lot of girls from football, I'm involved in football chaplaincy, and a lot of them will share all this like interesting, weird, new agey stuff, like about, but I'm kind of thinking, what issues are they trying to tackle? What are they trying to speak into? And then using that to shape my own videos of what I can do. And then other times, like my Facebook has cultural Zambian Christians that are just like sharing Bible verses that have no relevance to the situation. So there's that as well to deal with. So it's so many angles, and it's just thinking, okay, how can I do that well? And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't worked it out. I'm just I'm in the process, but I am aware that I need to like do more of it, because they're watching. So can I do something that they can engage with?
Okay, final question. How do you stop yourself from being addicted to social media?
When life is normal, like without COVID, I just don't have time to actually be on it. So for somebody that posts on a lot of social media platforms, I don't actually use it myself that much, because I have no time to really do that. So I come from work, I come back, and I've got stuff on. So that kind of helps a little bit. What I'm trying to do now, when I've got a bit more time to just, is something that a few people have already mentioned. I literally leave my phone in another room and do other things, and just plan a bit of discipline. I have some accountability as well. There's a few friends that I have that I've said to them, hey, if I get full of myself on social media, if you think I'm like overdoing it, there was a time a few years ago I was posting like all the time. One of my friends was like, girl, just chill. So I've kind of given some friends permission to just challenge me if they think that I'm promoting myself, or if they think content's just gone a bit So accountability. The people at my church actually know, the elders of my church know that I do social media, so they're aware of it. So they do
That's really
sometimes watch
cool.
my content.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just important not to just do it in isolation. Like, I know
Yeah.
it's like something I do in free time, but actually every now and again, pastor encouraged me, like, oh, keep doing what you're doing, and how can I support you? Can we repost some of your stuff? Like, but they'll also, if I posted something not helpful or whatever, or something that raised an issue that they needed to deal with, I know that they would like want to talk to me about that. So that's another thing, just accountability from friends, community group. And then just every now and again, I'll just go off social media completely. I don't announce it. I'll just, not even like a very long time, just a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and I'll just do that, and just so that I know that there's life outside of that. And because I don't have a desire, it's not really about growing my platform as such. Like, I don't care. Nobody cares really in terms of my subscribers. They're not like, oh, where is Inonge? She hasn't posted a video in like a month. Like, I've got that privilege because it's kind of a small channel that I can just disappear for a month and no one will even notice.
Great.
So that's, yeah.
Thank you so much. Back to Sarah.
Thank you for that. I have to admit, I only discovered what TikTok was relatively recently, and it was when I was interviewing somebody at work, and I was like, yeah, I definitely know what that is. I had no idea. So I will go and check out yours, and maybe I can learn a little bit more about it. Our last, but by no means least person we're interviewing this evening is the lovely Rosie. Can you give us a wave? Hi. Rosie, can you tell us, how are you involved with the world of social media?
Hello. Great to join you this evening. I am very much involved in Instagram at the moment. I think it kind of, it flips between certain mediums. So Instagram is the one I use the most. I do occasionally use SoundCloud. I do that for spoken word poetry side of things. It's a really good medium for if I'm sharing content with other spoken word artists. And YouTube is probably my oldest account. I started using YouTube probably about 7 years ago. And that's mainly as an avenue, for just sharing videos which I wanted to share with friends. And it's kind of not really expanded much further than that. But I would say probably Instagram is the one I use the most at the moment.
Great, thanks for that. And Rosie, where in the world are you?
I'm currently in Norwich, all the way in the east of England. Yeah.
I did quite enjoy that with interviewing you and Philippa. You were basically at the as far away width-wise as you could probably be from one another. I thought that worked out quite nicely. Great. So Rosie, similar question. How do you feel about comparison when it comes to social media? So you said you've got a YouTube channel that's mainly for your friends, so I guess relatively small following, but others, I guess it may be bigger or wider. Yeah, how do you deal with the issue of comparison?
That's a really good question. So it's worth remembering, and I have to remind myself of this quite regularly. It'd be interesting to know what the other panelists think, but I used to not know any Christians who did this kind of thing, who wrote blogs or shared videos or just used their accounts in a way where they were sharing their faith. And comparison was impossible because I actually had no Christian friends when I was at school, when I started using social media. And so it was kind of born out of necessity. And so I think I started at a point where I wasn't trying to reach anyone. I was just trying to reach one or two people. I mostly started writing poetry on Tumblr, which, for those who don't know Tumblr, it's a kind of very niche sort of like geeky website where you can post blog articles, you can post photos. And I mostly wrote individual poetry for my non-Christian friends, which were very covert ways of me trying to demonstrate that I really wanted to talk to them about Jesus. I really wanted to talk to them about hope. And so I do struggle with comparison now. I'm blessed to have Christian colleagues who perform poetry, who I do sometimes struggle with comparing myself to them. And reminding myself that they have very different aims to what I do. And I'm learning what it looks like to encourage other Christians in what they do. But I really think that comparison with other Christians in terms of sharing social media is actually a real luxury, because it demonstrates how many people there are who are trying to share their faith with their friends. I'm not trying to do the same thing as them. I think Philippa phrased it really, really brilliantly in terms of talking about, like, we're trying to reach our individual audience, the people who God's placed in our lives personally, who we want to reach with things. And so, yeah, reminding myself that it's a real luxury that there are other Christians, that I know other Christians who are doing this. Most people in the world haven't read a Christian post. They haven't read a Christian response to COVID-19. And so actually it's worth being reminded of that. And yeah, reminding, as we talked about earlier, like, we're all super unique. We all have different aspects which we can draw upon when it comes to Christianity.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Rosie. Yeah, I think I get that whole point about that. I feel on social media at the moment there are so many articles telling me how to have a Christian response to coronavirus, and yet it's the ones that I share a lot of them anyway, but actually for my non-Christian friends, it's things that I write and say that they read to the bottom of and then engage with. So I can share a really well-written article by someone who knows a lot more than me, but they're probably not going to read it. They will read stuff because it's me. My mum, not a Christian, subscribes to my work newsletter, which means she reads it. So a non-Christian reading a prayer newsletter, it's ridiculous, but it's because of who it's written by. So I think that's a really good point. You know, as Philippa said earlier, you know, we are in the right place because we have our group of friends who, you know, plays for them. Philippa said it much better than that, but you remember, you were there. The other question I've got for you is, Norwich is not known as being the centre of the universe. Kind of opposite. Yeah, well, some could argue, Rosie, some could argue that it's, you know, a bit far off.
Yep.
How do you cope with isolation with that? I can't imagine that Norwich is buzzing with Christian bloggers and YouTubers. So please tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. This is the point where, because I think Norwich was one of the counties where we were one of the last to have a COVID diagnosis. It's basically, to live here is essentially to self-isolate. So there is a positive within that. Yeah, in terms of isolation, so pre-COVID, which feels like a long time ago now, there is actually quite a creative network in Norwich. So it is quite known for its creative writing. It has the National Centre for Creative Writing here. UEA is quite high up in its creative writing course. If anyone's ever heard of Ishiguro, writer, yeah, graduated from UEA. So in terms of creativity, I work with university students, and so a lot of them are quite creative. They do have that kind of background, and so the kinds of things which they post, sometimes they post books that they've written. We just had one student who's submitted his script and has been accepted by the BBC, which is very exciting. But yeah, in terms of loneliness and isolation, I think I was convinced at one stage that social media was making me lonely, and I was using it as a coping mechanism. When I first initially moved to Norwich, it was very lonely. I think that partly was because I'd been moving every year for the past 7 years up until that point. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that I would give up social media for 6 months. And it felt quite extreme, but I thought, I'm finding this so hard to relate to people and make friends that I might as well just go cold turkey. And the first 3 months was the worst. I think I felt more lonely then than I'd ever done in my life. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but I think it is true. This might sound like an obvious statement, but giving up social media doesn't make you more connected. I think social media in itself isn't a bad thing. We can often believe it takes away from community. And here's the thing, the algorithms and the advertisements do mess it up. they do kind of make it addictive in itself. But I don't think that in itself, if you give up social media, you will therefore gain community. When I gave up that social media for 6 months, I missed people's baptism invites, I missed friends' birthday parties, I missed different actual real life events that I'd been invited to. So, I mean, anyone who's made friends outside of university will tell you it's a slow process. I think the fact that we are part of a church does make a big difference. And talking to my non-Christian friends about life post-graduation, finding friends and making good community and building good community when you're not part of a church is really hard. And yeah, I missed having interactions with my international friends, where my only interaction with them was via Facebook Messenger. Yeah, so I think that's kind of like a drab view on on being isolated, but I think there's a view that if you give up social media, there'll be some friends like waiting by the window just ready to like meet you, and that's not quite the case. And actually I think we can feed into helping people find genuine community on social media, not bragging about the fact that we have good friendships, but inviting other non-Christians into it.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Rosie. Thank you to all of the 6 of you who've been willing to be interviewed this evening. I know some of you were less than excited about the prospect, but I personally have learned from all of you, so thank you for what you've shared. We have got 16 minutes now where we're going to have some Q&A. So Kate's going to kick us off. Can I ask that those answering, try and keep them as succinct, yeah, that's the word, as possible, so we can get through as many as possible. There will be, you can connect with each of those who've spoken through their social media handles. I believe, yeah, you call them your socials. I'm really not cool enough to be doing this, but anyway. And you can please do keep asking questions. If you're not yet part of the Passion for Evangelism Facebook group, you'll be able to join that as well and start some discussions on various topics there. You'd be really welcome. Kate.
Okay, sorry. On the Instagram story at the moment is everybody's handle, but if you aren't on Instagram and you want to find a specific person that you want to follow, then just comment in the chat and I can send it to you. Also, you could join the Facebook group, the Passion for Evangelism Facebook group, and we'll add it all in there so that if you wanted to connect with a specific person to ask them a specific question, then you would be able to. How do you speak to a mixed audience on social media, e.g. faith or no faith, different ages and stages of life? Should you just pick one audience and stick to it?
One quick suggestion: if you're like really stuck and you don't know what you want to do, I suggest writing something for like one person. So like one conversation that you had. Write that blog post or whatever it is, or that kind of form of medium with that one particular person in mind, and then send it to them afterwards. It's really likely that it's going to apply to more people. If it applies to more people, then that's a bonus. And so if it's for, let's say, a non-Christian friend based on a conversation you had, it's really likely it's going to apply to other people. But I think starting with that one particular conversation that you had will really help to actually turn it into a further conversation later on. But that's not a hard and fast rule. I think there are many great blog posts or any other kind of media which are for more general, but start small and then kind of go wide. But I feel like that's echoing what everyone else has been saying.
Thanks for that. I've got a question. I think probably Philippa, I think you were really good at this, so heads up, we're going to come to you first if that's okay. How do we communicate on big issues? So I think guessing, talking about the big things like COVID-19, depression that you've mentioned, on social media without coming across as being just too simplistic or glib or trite about it. Any tips on that?
Yeah, I think that, I guess what I've tried to do is try to be as real and as honest as I can be about the pain of life. And I think that that's something that the gospel really sets us free to do. And actually that in itself is this really amazing witness. So if you're able to stand up and say, I really struggle with mental health. So for example, during Red January, this isn't me bragging about it, but I am really proud. I ran every day in January. I mean, I was basically just above walking and was overtaken by all the old people in the park. But the point is, when I was doing Red January, every day that I did it, I posted something about my mental health journey that had helped me along the way. And one of those things was the Bible. And there were loads of other things to do with people and things that they'd done, pills, all of that kind of thing. But I think like the gospel sets us free to be open about our mental health struggles. You know, I'm not like, I don't feel the need to be ashamed of the darkness that there is in my life, because Jesus stands beside me and says, I'm not ashamed to call her mine. And that's really enabled me to be bold about my weakness on social media. And when you see that, I think people see, oh, you're not, like, what you're not doing is presenting that you've got the answers and you've got it sorted and you think the world is neat and all tied up. You're clearly a mess. Like, I don't think anyone who's looked at my social media saw anything about me other than this is a mess. Like, and I don't like that. That's okay, because that's what we all are. Like, that is like one of the massive gospel central truths is you're all messes, but Jesus loves you anyway. And I think being able to bear witness to our messes is a way that we can point to Jesus in a really powerful way.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Philippa. I'm sure others could add more, but let's move on to the next question, Kate.
Great. Okay. This is a really helpful question. I really like it. I don't like social media, but I feel pressure to use it. Should I? What opportunities does it give that personal relationships pursued in other ways don't? Anybody?
I could say it's fine.
Oh, thanks.
I think if you don't want to use social media, you don't have to. Like, don't feel that just because everyone else is, you also have to be. I would say at this time when it's really difficult to connect in person, do you think about the opportunities to use other forms of, like, I want to kind of, I guess, emphasize that like digital forms of relationships are really valuable in building friendships and building relationships. So maybe do think about what you can use, but it's okay if that's a WhatsApp message rather than a blog or a Facebook post. And I would also say that if you have an Instagram or a Facebook account or whatever it is, and I often feel the pressure to like have to have a response and have to have an answer and have something that is really helpful to share. And sometimes it's really valuable to use your platform to amplify other people's voices. So if you find something that someone else has said that encapsulates something really well, you don't need to always be the person saying it or the person adding to it. You can just share that and direct it or share it directly with somebody, and kind of use social media as a way to connect people with other people's ideas.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And there's some people commenting about actually video calls, using that's been really helpful in this time. I think that's a great thing to do if you just aren't that bothered by social media.
I think if you can do it personally, it's amazing. I think probably one of the reasons I'll do quite a lot of stuff online is because like I don't live where my non-Christian friends are. Like I've just moved, so I'm in a new place, so it's just a way that I can reach people that I don't live with. Yeah, basically.
And Rosie said in the comment that she thinks social media is an avenue into further conversations. I think that, and someone else was saying, weren't they, that people kind of see their post and then they can talk about it, and they might mention it, and they might say, oh, I noticed that you posted this, which is really cool. And it doesn't have to be that you have the most amazing thing to say on that post, but if you're piquing someone's interest, then you can come back to it. So have you got another question?
Yeah, I think we will have to make this one the last question, sadly, just for time. But as I said before, we want this conversation to keep on going. We're not going to work out how to use social media at its best in one evening. Let's keep on sharing ideas. If you're not part of it, Passion for Evangelism Facebook page, search Passion for Evangelism, it'll come up. One of us will approve you. The last question is, any ideas for using social media during Holy Week? Inonge, I know we haven't heard from you in terms of the questions. Have you got something you want to add? Feel free to say no, but I'm just aware we haven't included you yet.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just like nodding away. But I think just for Holy Week, I would maybe encourage using resources that you find. So Speak Live, like the podcast YouTube channel, has some great stuff. So I find it hard to just come up with stuff that's helpful and connects, but they just have a ton of videos. So I would make use of those. When you're sharing other people's content, like Joanne, I don't know who mentioned that, can't remember now. It's just helpful to write a little caption, just what the video or the article or whatever you're sharing is about, so that other people can see. You might be a fan of whatever you're sharing, but other people might be like, okay, great post, what does that mean? So just share something like, you know, this is really thought-provoking and makes me think about this or makes me think about that. And then that just lets people, when they're scrolling through the feed and they don't have time to stop, they might just stop and be, oh, that's something I've been thinking about. So yeah, make use of resources like that. I think that's all I've got to say on that.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. Well, thank you once again to everyone for coming this evening. Many of you have cheered me this evening by the clapping and the thumbs up and everything else we've seen, and smiling faces, of course. So thank you for being part of it. Thank you for your questions. I say please do carry on be part of this conversation. I think I've been really challenged about how little I think about social media, and I post without thinking. So we can be praying for one another, and that we would we'd be more thinking about how we're putting Jesus first in what we're posting.
And
yeah.
if I can say one thing, if you want to post about about anything that you have learned tonight that's been helpful, and then we're on social media, so you could tag us in it. And if you wanted to give us suggestions on how we could be improving our social media, then we would love to know. Please let us know.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kate. Nay, who some of you will know, some of you may not, is the mastermind behind a lot of this. So firstly, thank you, Nay. But she's also asked that everyone takes a screenshot. Now, I'm really aware that if you'll take a screenshot now, I'm very much spotlighted.
Can we make it the gallery? Back to the gallery?
Yeah, Beth, can we spotlight, please? Just so me and Kate aren't giant. Oh, Philip is giant now. Can we do that?
I've taken you off spotlight, so you just need to put gallery. Everyone just needs to put
Can
gallery.
everyone wave? Everyone wave?
Oh, I can't get off gallery.
Maybe still wave.
Oh, I don't need to wave. That's it. Amazing.
Yeah, so if you could take a screenshot and share it on social media, share what you've been thinking about, obviously in a way that is relevant to your audience. Feel free to share. I think some of my non-Christian friends would actually be fascinated that a group of Christians have gathered to spend the evening thinking about this in this way, because it's so weird. But I promise we finish at 9, so we're going to. Nay, can I just ask you to pray for us as we close?
Father God, we thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for each person that's planned and prepared and spoken, for Sarah and Kate, for Beth that did tech. Thank you that together we're stronger, and thank you so much for PFE and these wonderful women. Lord, I just really want to pray for every woman here that they'd sense your call on their lives tonight to take seriously the challenge to communicate the good news of Jesus to their friends right now. Lord, we don't want to miss these opportunities, particularly when the world is so broken and so isolated. When we know of friends and family that have faced death, Lord, we want to seize this opportunity for you. I thank you that we've been challenged to stop comparing with each other, and I pray tonight we'd give that up and we would get on and share good news. Lord, I pray for those of us that just need a bit more inspiration and boldness and courage. Lord, in our weakness, please would you be powerful. Name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, and thank you all. See you at a future PFE event, but please do keep in